During Jenn Todling's first marriage, when her spouse was chronically ill, after being his caregiver for 5 years, Jenn had a mental breakdown. She felt trapped and hopeless, and that she would never be able to leave the situation or have a fulfilling life. This was a turning point for her to realize that her mental health was at risk and she needed to seek help and support. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Carol. It's so great to be here.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
With a past life as an audit partner at Ernest and Young and a stint at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Jenn Todling's journey to become an author, speaker, and coach embodies the power of transformation. She's an adjunct faculty coach at the University of Denver, and she is here today to tell us her story. Take it away, Jenn.
Oh, thanks so much, Carol. Yeah, it's such a great honor to be here. And just as you were sharing that introduction, just it feels like so many lives ago, right? And
No
so,
kidding.
yeah,
Right.
it's like, wow, that was my life. And it was my life. And it wasn't something I expected to happen. I got married at 20. And unfortunately, I knew it wasn't the right relationship for me, but at that time I didn't have the courage to say that out loud and to kind of say no. And I was really looking for adventure. I grew up in Colorado. I had had some caregiving responsibilities as a youth with my siblings. And so this idea of moving to California and having this new life was really appealing to me. And a few years into the marriage, my spouse did become chronically ill and disabled, and the situation became volatile. And I will say, it kind of slowly progressed, and I was still, managing my a new career. I was finishing college, and over time, the weight of the situation started to crush me, honestly. And I, as you mentioned in that intro, came to a breaking point where I realized I was not okay. And as much as I wanted to support the situation, to give, it was a really important wake up call for me to realize that my mental health mattered too, and start to imagine what a new life could look like outside of that situation. And so that was sort of the beginning of this journey to find myself again and find hope in a situation that truly felt hopeless, and to take steps to make big shifts, which included moving to New York City and finding dance, which was a long lost passion of mine, and really search for that new beginning.
And how did you handle the guilt?
Ooh, ooh. Honestly, that was the hardest part of finding the courage to leave. And so once I realized I needed to make a change, I sought therapy. So I found a therapist and I met with him weekly. And that was literally the topic of our conversation every week was, I feel guilty for X. How is it okay if I do Y? Right. And I would just have this sounding board because I was fairly isolated in that situation. And I didn't have a lot of experiences as a young adult, sort of honoring boundaries for myself. And so I needed that thought partner to help me realize that, yes, it was okay to make these shifts. And so it took probably, I don't know, 6 to 9 months of weekly therapy to work through and process that guilt. And it's not like the guilt just went away, right? It continued and I had to
Right,
work through
right.
that, but really deep immersion to say, okay, no, this actually, I matter too. And I had to just remind myself that, I was trying to figure out, what was the cause of the situation and, maybe make excuses. And I had to come to a point and realize it didn't really matter what was causing the volatility of the situation. It was no longer good for me. And that was enough for me to find the courage to walk away.
And what would be your advice to someone who might be in a similar situation and struggling?
Yeah, I mean, I think first just being really honest with your feelings. I think we can get caught up in maybe how someone else is telling us we should be feeling, or that our feelings don't matter, and we might sort of invalidate those. And so I think just starting with saying, hey, I'm not happy, or this isn't working for me. Getting some external support, right? Whether that's a friend, a family member, a therapist, right? Someone who's non-biased in your life to help you get a different perspective of what's happening, I think can help open your eyes to say, oh, wait a minute, this actually isn't good for me. And what resources are available to support me in making changes or having different choices available.
Like you said in the beginning, it was a lifetime ago. And it's interesting that you have changed as a person
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's interesting because I think there's a core of who I was at 19 that I'm still that person, but it took me, God, I can't even do the math in my head right now, but almost 30 years, 25 years to be able to kind of really embrace that. So there's a confidence that has grown as I've gotten older.
That's a good point. So, is there anything else that you want to share about your story before we get into what you can offer the audience today?
Yeah, I think the other message that I had to learn the hard way is just the power of trusting your intuition. Like I said
Mm,
at the beginning, I knew this was not the relationship for me, and I couldn't say it out loud, right?
okay,
And
okay,
had I just verbalized that, and I tried a few times and said, "Hey, I don't think I should get married," but I had already said yes, right? It was that people pleaser inside of me that wasn't I didn't have the courage in that moment to shift it earlier. Um, but when you have those moments in your body that's saying something doesn't feel right, pay attention because there's probably something that isn't right about that. And I think you can avoid a lot of pain and suffering, so to speak, potentially if you just listen to what your body is trying to tell you.
now that's a good point because this can, as you shared earlier, this affected your mental health. What about your physical health? Can that not affect that as well?
Oh, absolutely. And during my 10-year marriage, so I grew up as a dancer, like that was my passion. But during that 10-year marriage, I stopped dancing. And so I also didn't have physical activity to work through big emotions. And what I've learned as I've kind of come on the other side of this is how important it is to get into your body, right? Whether that's through movement or exercise or walking, because it really can help clear unstuck patterns and help you get clarity on your life. And so the body and the mind are absolutely connected. And so I was not in an ideal, physical or mental shape when I was in that situation.
I think that's a given, isn't it? I mean, that's for true for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what motivated you to do what you're doing to help others?
Yeah, I've always been passionate about making a difference. I think that's something that's really fundamental to who I am, and that probably contributed to why I stayed as long as I did in the marriage.
Mm,
And so I over calibrated that a little bit, right? Like maybe I could have found ways to not have to make it to a breaking point before I found the courage to leave.
right.
But I think I've always been motivated to support, to inspire, to care. Like that's just part of who I am. And I think in this next chapter, that's become, even more prevalent because I don't I don't actually regret any of the choices that I've made, which I think
Mhm,
sometimes people are surprised by because it's brought me to where I am.
right.
And I am fairly comfortable being vulnerable to share what I believe are some learning lessons that have come out of my life to hopefully inspire others to maybe not have to walk such a treacherous path to find their way. And so that has helped me in this next chapter say, okay, how can I contribute my gifts more and in different ways so that I am, I've had a lot of life lessons that I've had to learn, and how can I help others maybe make it a little bit easier along the way?
And I think what I have written down here anyway, are 3 points that to share with the audience. And the first one is the power of mindset in looking for hope in challenging situations. So address that, please.
Yeah. And I think about, one of the things that I really held on to, even as a youth in high school, is there's a Henry Ford quote that says, if you think you can or you
Mm,
can't, you're right.
right,
Right.
right,
And
right, right.
I mean, I have a bias. One of my strengths is positivity. So my whole life, I've always sort of been the glass half full person. But I have learned that, how we believe or what we believe will influence, or what we think we're capable of will influence our outcomes. How some of the brain science works. And so I think when you're in those moments of challenge or darkness where it does feel hopeless, for me, there was a lot of power in saying, okay, it doesn't have to be like this forever. I am a strong person. I am resourceful. I can figure this out. And that confidence obviously, well, has grown with time. I wasn't, that confident as the 30-year-old trying to make these changes, but I started to open up this belief of, or this visualization rather, of what would an ideal future life look like. Even though it felt
Mm,
impossible, I started dreaming and then planning as if that was real. So, I always wanted to travel the world. So I started dreaming about what it would be like to travel to Paris, and which hotels would I pick, and what is the flight, and where would I visit. And then it was amazing because then 3 months later, I am sipping champagne under the Eiffel Tower and honored to, so which I wouldn't have even imagined. And this was just this creative outlet to support my sanity, honestly. But our brain doesn't always know that difference. So if we practice, believing what we want to see in our future, we visualize that, it actually increases the likelihood that that can happen. And so I think just allowing permission that even when it feels hopeless, to dream bigger can be really powerful.
very well said. I appreciate that. Thank you. And
Yeah.
another point that you had was how creative expression can help support us in getting unstuck in sticky situations.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where I think for me the dance came in. And so once I left my marriage, I moved, across the country from California to New York City. And I was just hungry for new adventures. And so it was almost like I had been living in black and white for 10 years, and now I'm living in color. And so I wanted to explore everything creatively, right? So I'm taking Italian classes and writing classes, and then I found the ballroom dance studio. And I had never danced ballroom. I was a ballet dancer growing up. But there was something about dancing in partnership and kind of learning a new language with, interacting with your partner, and honestly just moving the energy in your body, that was a 3-year journey of healing and
Mm,
transformation, because I was connecting with my body and the emotions, and I was embracing it, and I was also honest that some partners were a good match for me and others weren't.
right,
And
right.
so I could just say, hey, actually this person's a little too close and I don't really like their style, or I feel safe here and
Right.
comfortable, but not in this situation. And so I just was really open and curious. And that creative outlet, I mean, I really soared in just owning who I was and not apologizing for it, or feeling like it was less than. And so I have, especially through the last 10 years, done a lot more creative expression. And I've seen that that's a really powerful way when we are feeling stuck. Sometimes just going for a walk or turning on, a 2-minute song and dancing it out can help you kind of just clear that energy and have more clarity on what the right next step is.
You just said not apologizing for it, and I appreciate that because that goes right to the subject of guilt. When you
Yeah.
were free from that guilt, you probably stopped apologizing. And that's what you're
Yeah.
advising people to do, correct?
Yeah, and I will say this isn't something that I've mastered. Like I'm navigating, I'm on my own work in process journey. And
Right.
I mean, I'm navigating that now as I'm exploring even different career paths in this sort of, 2.0 version of my life. And there are things I'm saying no to that I feel sometimes guilty about because I'm like, ooh, I would be really good in that role, but it doesn't align with how I want to live my life right
Mm,
now.
mm,
And I'm having to sort of say no. And so it still feels uncomfortable, but I'm really proud of myself that I'm having the courage. And it's probably
right.
also like a universe lesson of, hey, you need more practice here of honoring your needs, and that's okay.
That's excellent. I'm glad I asked you that.
Yeah, me too.
The next one is how we can go after our dreams. I love this one, no matter our age or circumstances. I started my new career when I was 67. And,
Wow.
it took a while to get over the mindset, false mindset that you're too old. Now I look back and I think, oh my goodness, I was quite young. You know,
Yeah, well,
it's how you look at it.
it's so true. And I think our society, like there is this bias sometimes towards, okay, you're 20 something, right? You got to figure out what you want to do with your life and you better get it right because you're stuck there, right? And
Right,
and
right,
I was in a profession where, people did have the one job, out of college till
right.
retirement, spent 30, 40 years at a place. And so I left that a year ago after 20 years in public accounting, and I was kind of the odd person out of like, wait a minute, you can do something else in midlife. And I've been really on this journey of, I think for me, so I'm in my mid 40s. Like there's a lot of just reevaluating the things you think are important, maybe in your 20s and 30s, look different as you age. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to say, actually, I want to try something new. And so for me, that looked like going back and getting a master's degree, writing a book, right? And also leaving my corporate career and saying, actually, no, I feel complete with this accounting side of my passion. Now I want to shift more into coaching and teaching and really in the people space because that's what really lights me up. And you also realize, life is short. And so being able to have the courage to pivot, I think is really powerful. And so I think you're seeing more of that. And as you see more of that, I think it normalizes that we can change our mind and we can do different things. And that can be really powerful. So I definitely love this message because it's not just about figuring it out when you're 20 something, because no one really knows what they want to do at that age. And so giving
Right.
yourself grace to try different things.
And as a speaker and a coach, tell us about that and if people want to get in touch with you about either of those.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Yeah, so I have been an executive coach for a little bit more than 10 years now. And so I play in this space. I do a lot of leadership coaching. So people that are looking to be stronger leaders. I coach a lot of people in the accounting profession since I have ties there, or professional services. And then I also love in my private practice supporting leaders and a lot of women actually who are looking to sort of redefine their life in midlife, right? So whether that's a career pivot, or they want to design more passion projects into their day, like that's something I really enjoy. And then my speaking, I infuse a lot of neuroscience principles and creative expression. So that could look like different workshops I love to teach or keynote presentations. But I really like to bring a lot of energy and passion, but also practical tools to really help support people in being the best version of themselves. And so my website, jenntodling.com, is the best place to sort of get a preview of all of that and houses all of the different ways to connect with me.
Okay. And your book,
My book.
Dance on Your Own 2 Feet. Love it.
Yeah. Yes. Such a powerful journey.
So tell us about it and who should get it and what type of book it is. Is it a work, like a study book, a workbook, a story?
Yeah, so this is my memoir.
Okay.
So Dancing on My Own 2 Feet, a new life, one step at a time. And it really chronicles, it starts kind of where we started this conversation at age 20, saying yes to that marriage and the 10 years that follow. And then it shifts into the beautiful adventure of traveling the world and dancing and then finding love again. And so it is
Oh, yay.
yeah, yeah, it is. It does have a happy ending. Not to spoil it, but it's my journey of becoming me. And so I think that's where the title Dancing on My Own 2 Feet. Yes, there's love. Yes, there's partnership. Yes, there's other people, but this is my journey to say, okay, I'm a whole person. And, now I can find the love I'm looking for because I've, taken the time to be me. I would say it's a great book. The people who have really enjoyed reading it, I mean, it's a great book club read. So I've done a few different book clubs, and that's been a really good. There's a
Okay.
lot to discuss. It's great for women, but I've also had a lot of men who have really enjoyed reading it. Of just if you're looking for an inspirational read to give you hope and courage to make changes in your
Okay.
life, I think it's a really great place to start. Well, I guess one thing that I've learned, and maybe it goes back to your question on, doing things as you get older, right? And not giving up on your dreams. I think for me, this book was part of my journey to say, okay, I have had these experiences that I want to hopefully inspire others, but how do I make that happen while I'm also in a global pandemic because I wrote this during the pandemic
Okay.
and also raising a 3-year-old at the time, right? So I think something that I think I'd love to also offer is for those people who are in the throes of, especially that midlife challenge, where you're raising kiddos or you're, supporting your aging parents and you're trying to find time for creative outlets, 10 minutes a day can make a really big difference. So the big dreams don't have to be leaving your relationship, starting over, right? It can literally be, I'm going to take a 10-minute walk a day. I'm going to journal for 10 minutes a day. I'm going to have a dance party, once a day for 2 minutes and maybe incorporate my family in that. And so I think realizing that these shifts, if you want to make your life feel more fulfilling, don't have to be big items. They can also be smaller steps in increments.
What kind of dance?
Yeah, so I love the ballroom and the Latin space. I love being able to be a little sassy and have a little passion and personality. I really love partnership styles. And I have found, and I think my book highlights this journey, that dancing with someone gives you really good insight into their character. And so if you're trying to see if someone is a good match for you, maybe as a romantic partner, the dance floor is a great way to experiment because you can see their essence on, are they gentle? Are they, more direct? How do you communicate? What if you step on each other's toes, right? How do you, can you navigate some of those challenges? And so it's a really beautiful expression that is a lot of fun to do with a partner. And so my husband and I do continue to dance today. My now
It-
husband.
Did you test him in the dance field
I
before
did.
you
So
married him?
I did. Yeah, we met on the dance floor. We met on the
Oh
dance
no.
floor. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, and he went through a thorough vetting process. I will just say because I had not really vetted my first husband or known what to
Right.
ask for. And so I think that was the benefit of maturity and just wisdom is I had a lot of questions that I wanted to know if we were going to be able to be aligned and how we live our life. And so there were, I was living in Washington, D.C. when we met, and I didn't have a car because, you could get by on public transportation. And there was a dance class that we wanted to go to, but it was sort of in the suburbs. And so he would drive me each week, and I would use that time, the 10, 15 minutes each way, to ask some very intentional questions to get a sense of, are we a good match? And I think that was really helpful. Now, not everything you're going to be able to figure out before you commit to someone, but I think we were able to really navigate some of those bigger, important issues and know if we were headed in the right direction.
Well, I think that this has been both encouraging and inspiring and motivating for the audience. I appreciated the way you laid it out, and the message is definitely a positive message. And thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Even
thanks,
telling
Carol.
your past story, it's still, you're doing it from a positive perspective, and that was then and this is now, and people can look at that and realize that they can change, just as as we listen to your story today. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think and I appreciate that, right? And I think that just goes back to sort of your first question on the mindset, is there is so much possible in our world that sometimes does feel impossible. And it's okay to just acknowledge, I feel like this is an impossible situation.
Good.
And just by acknowledging that, you're already stepping into courage to
Right.
not let that not to succumb to that, right? And let that hold you back. And so I would just say, there's so much beauty and possibility in the world, regardless of your circumstances. And so if you can spend 5 minutes just imagining what that ideal future looks like, and start taking small baby steps towards that, it's amazing how far your life can shift over a period of time. So I hope that will inspire your listeners as well.
You just said something, acknowledging that you're stepping into courage. Acknowledging what in particular? Your shortcomings,
I would say acknowledging where you're at. So it could be just even the emotion. So when you look at some of like the neuroscience or even stress research, when we can just name the emotion that we're experiencing, it helps reduce the weight of that emotion. So sometimes we resist it, right? Oh, I don't want to tell people that I'm depressed. I don't want to tell people I'm feeling hopeless.
Right.
I don't want people to think of me X, Y, or Z. But if we can just say, I'm really frustrated right now, this is really hard, it takes away some of that heaviness and helps us then move into seeing more open possibilities of the future.
That's excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been, as I said, inspiring, encouraging, and all those. And I thank you for that. And I appreciate your sense of humor. And I trust that people will be encouraged as well to look at your website and to get your book. Say the name again, please.
Dancing on My Own 2 Feet by Jenn Todling.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And thank you for being on. Never,
Thanks, Carol.
ever give up hope.
I really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.